Blessings, friends. Welcome back to High Kadosh Ministries, where holiness is a way of life. And Jesus Christ is King of all kings and Lord of all lords. And together the people of God say, Hallelujah. Well, friends, it's a blessing to be with you this morning. Again, I trust that you have your coffee in front of you, the book of Enoch opened, and your hearts prepared for the word of the Lord as we sit together and we look into the things that God would have us to learn. Now, friends, today is June the 2nd of the year 2017, and this is One a Day for the Soul. Now, we are continuing our study on the book of 1st Enoch, and today we find ourselves in chapter 26. And something I should have mentioned at the start, and I failed to, so I'll mention it now, is the book of Enoch is written into 5 segments, or 5 parts. And so we have the book of the Watchers, which is what we've been discussing, these fallen angels, and that goes from chapter 1 to chapter 36. Then you have the book of the parables, and that's going to go from 37 to 71. Then you have the astronomical book, which is going to go from chapters 72 to chapters 82. You have the dreams and visions, which are going to go from chapter 83 to chapter 90. And then finally, you have the Epistle of Enoch, which will be chapter 91 to 108. Now, as you can see, we are just about to finish the book of Watchers, which is going to take us to chapter 36. And there's hope today that we will finish this segment. And in our next time together, we'll pick up on the book of Parables. So let's begin at chapter 26, and let's just see how far we get. Enoch says, I went from thence to the middle of the earth, and I saw a blessed place in which there were trees with branches abiding and blooming of a dismembered tree. And there I saw a holy mountain, and underneath the mountain to the east there was a stream, and it flowed toward the south. And I saw towards the east another mountain higher than this, and between them a deep and narrow ravine. In it also ran a stream underneath the mountain. And to the west thereof there was another mountain, lower than the former, and of small elevation, and a ravine deep and dry between them. And another deep and dry ravine was at the extremities of the 3 mountains. And all the ravines were deep and narrow, being formed of hard rock, and trees were not planted upon them. And I marveled at the rocks, I marveled at the ravine, yea, I marveled very much. Now, I would encourage us to go back and read chapter 26 at a later time and spend some time trying to visualize what Enoch is portraying for us, because he ends the chapter by saying, I marveled very much. So if this was such a spectacle, we're not going to be able to envision it in our imaginations as much as reading as we just did, except we go back and read it very slowly, very carefully, and allow these images to build within our mind's eye as we read this chapter and gain from it all Enoch would have us to gain from it. Chapter 27, Then said I, For what object is this blessed land which is entirely filled with trees? So notice here, several of the next chapters are going to be talking about these different trees. So he says, what object is this blessed land, which is entirely filled with trees, and this accursed valley between? Then Uriel, one of the 4, also one of the holy angels who was with me, answered and said, This accursed valley is for those who are accursed forever. Here shall all the accursed be gathered together, who utter with their lips against the Lord unseemly thoughts. Do you remember the words of Jesus where he said in Matthew chapter 12, verse 34, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks? And so it's not necessarily the fact that these people are guilty before the Almighty because of the words spoken, but by the very act that this is their nature, this is their attitude against God. And because it lies deep within their hearts, it reveals itself through their lips. And he says these are accursed people. They speak against the Lord unseemly words, and of his glory they speak hard things. Now, there's no need for us to elaborate here because you've seen it on television, you've heard it in your workplace. You know the way people speak against the Lord, so harshly and so cruelly against him, so ignorantly and so rebelliously. And so what this passage Enoch is giving us indicates is that the people will be judged by the things that they say. Why? Because the things that they say come out of their hearts. It says, here shall they be gathered together, and here shall be their place of judgment. In the last days there shall be upon them the spectacle of righteous judgment, in the presence of the righteous forever. Here shall the merciful bless the Lord of glory, the eternal King. Now, I think it's important to point out here, it says, in the last days there shall be upon them the spectacle of righteous judgment. All of us are aware of unrighteous judgment. Jesus even tells us, I believe in John chapter 8, that we are to judge, but if we're going to judge, we need to judge righteously. Not unrighteous judgment, not showing partiality, not showing prejudice, but we are to judge righteously. And when the Most High judges, he will judge righteously, because he knows the hearts of every man. And there will be no hidden motives in his judgment. There will be no prejudice in his judgment. There will be no favoritism in his judgment. Each man will be judged according to their own works. Verse 4, in the days of judgment over the former, they shall bless him for the mercy in accordance with which he has assigned them their lot. Now here he's talking about the righteous. They shall bless him for the mercy that he has shown to them. Then I blessed the Lord of glory, and I set forth his glory, and I lauded him gloriously. Lauded simply means I praised him gloriously. Because God has offered so much to his creatures, and dependent upon the fact whether we surrender to him or we reject and rebel against him, no man can accuse him for unrighteous judgment. And so he is to be praised gloriously for this judgment. Chapter 28, thence I went towards the east, into the midst of the mountain range of the desert, and I saw a wilderness, and it was solitary, full of trees and plants, and water gushed forth from above, rushing like a copious watercourse. Copious simply means large in number. It was rushing like a copious watercourse which flowed towards the northwest. It caused clouds and dew to ascend on every side. Chapter 29. Thence I went to another place in the desert, and approached to the east of this mountain range. And there I saw aromatic trees, excelling the fragrance of frankincense and myrrh. And the trees also were similar to the almond tree. Chapter 30. And beyond these I went afar to the east, and I saw another place, a valley full of water. And therein was a tree, the color of fragrant trees, such as the mastic tree. And on the sides of those valleys I saw fragrant cinnamon. And beyond these I proceeded to the east. Chapter 31. And I saw other mountains, and amongst them were groves of trees, and there flowed forth from them nectar, which is named Sorara and Gabanim. And beyond these mountains I saw another mountain to the east of the ends of the earth, whereon were aloe trees, and all the trees were full of stocktay, being like almond trees. And stocktay simply means a state of being of health. Chapter 32. And after these fragrant odors, as I looked towards the north over the mountains, I saw 7 mountains full of choice nard, and fragrant trees, and cinnamon, and pepper. And thence I went over the summits of all these mountains, far towards the east of the earth. And I passed above the Ethraean sea, and went far from it, and passed over the angel Zadiel. Now I looked back through the book of 1 Enoch, and I couldn't find that name. I don't know if we've talked about this angel before, but let's put this in our memory banks, Zadiel, an angel, and let's see if we can discover who he was. Verse 3, and I came to the garden of righteousness, and saw beyond those trees many large trees growing there, and of goodly fragrance, large, very beautiful and glorious, and the tree of wisdom, whereof they eat, and know great wisdom. This is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You're going to see this in verse 6. Verse 4, that tree is in height like the fir, and its leaves are like those of the carob tree, and its fruit is like the clusters of the vine, very beautiful. And the fragrance of the tree penetrates afar. Then I said, how beautiful is this tree, and how attractive is its look. Then Raphael, one of the four, the holy angel who was with me, answered me and said, This is the tree of wisdom, of which thy father old in years and thy aged mother, who were before thee, have eaten, and they learnt wisdom, and their eyes were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they were driven out of the garden. So this is talking about Adam and Eve partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Chapter 33. And from thence I went to the ends of the earth, and saw there great beasts, and each differed from the other. And I saw birds also differing in appearance, and beauty, and voice, the one differing from the other. And to the east of those beasts I saw the ends of the earth, whereon the heaven rests, and the portals of the heaven opened. And I saw how the stars of heaven come forth, and I counted the portals out of which they proceed, and wrote down all of their outlets, of each individual star by itself, according to their number and their names, their courses and their positions, and their times and their months, as Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, showed me, Uriel being one of the four. And remember, Psalm 147:4 tells us that God has numbered the stars, and that's exactly what Enoch is saying here in verse 3. Verse 4, He showed all things to me, and wrote them down for me, also their names He wrote for me, and their laws and their companies. And so again, Psalm 147:4 says God has both numbered the stars and He has named each star. Chapter 34, And from thence I went towards the north to the ends of the earth. And there I saw a great and glorious device at the ends of the whole earth. And here I saw 3 portals of heaven, open in the heaven. Through each of them proceed north winds. When they blow, there is cold, hail, frost, snow, dew, and rain. And out of one portal they blow for good. But when they blow through the other 2 portals, it is with violence and affliction on the earth, and they blow with violence. So there are 3 portals here. Out of one comes the good rain, snow, hail, sleet, frost, ice. But out of the other 2 come bad. Now Job chapter 37 verse 5 says this, God thundereth marvelously with His voice. Great things doeth He, which we cannot comprehend. For He says to the snow, Be thou on the earth. Likewise to the small rain, and to the great rain of His strength. He seals up the hand of every man, that all men may know his work. Then the beasts go into dens, and remain in their places. Out of the south comes the whirlwind, and cold out of the north. By the breath of God frost is given, and the breath of the waters is straitened. Also by watering He wearieth the thick cloud. He scattereth His bright cloud. And it is turned round about by His counsels, that they may do whatsoever He commandeth them upon the face of the world in the earth. But now look at verse 13. He causes these things to come for 3 reasons. Correction, for His land, or for mercy. In other words, calamity stops us in our tracks and makes us consider God, causes us to need God. For the land would be for the crops, the trees, the flowers. They need the moisture and the rain. Or for mercy. In other words, sometimes God will erase the corrupt people from the land so that the righteous can prevail. And so again, chapter 34 in the book of 1 Enoch, verse 3, out of one portal they blow for good. But when they blow through the other 2 portals, it is with violence and affliction on the earth, and they blow with violence. Chapter 35. From thence I went towards the west to the ends of the earth, and I saw there 3 portals of the heaven open, such as I had seen in the east, the same number of portals and the same number of outlets. Chapter 36. From thence I went to the south to the ends of the earth, and I saw there 3 open portals of the heaven, and thence there came dew, rain, and wind. And from thence I went to the east, to the ends of the heaven. And I saw here the 3 eastern portals of heaven open, and small portals above them. Through each of these small portals pass the stars of heaven, and run their course to the west on the path which is shown to them. And let's pay attention very closely to the last verse that we're going to read today. Enoch says, as often as I saw, I blessed always the Lord of glory. Now remember here, Enoch has seen violence, he's seen calamity, and he's seen great, glorious, marvelous things that the human eye is undeserving to behold. And yet he says, in all these things, as I saw each one, I blessed always the Lord of glory. I didn't question the Lord of glory, why he's allowing these things. I blessed him because he deserves to be blessed in all things. And he says, I continued to bless the Lord of glory, who has wrought great and glorious wonders. Why? To show the greatness of his work to the angels, to spirits, and to men, that they might praise his work and all his creation, that they might see the work of his might and praise the great work of his hands and bless him forever. How many people would give everything they have to sit before a famous artist and watch him create his masterpiece? And yet all you and I have to do, friends, to see the glorious handiwork, the masterpiece of the Most High, is walk outside. Look around. Look up. The clouds, the sky, the birds, the grass, the bees, the trees. These are all God's handiwork. And he is to be praised in each and every one of them, and for each and every one of them. And yet what is man so famous of doing? Ripping up the grass and laying down concrete. You see, man is trying to erase God's handiwork so that he can show the world what he has accomplished. With his skyscrapers and his cities, his boardwalks, his skyscrapers and his spacious malls. And if you would remove all of these things at one time, there was the handiwork of God. How often we take these things for granted. So I challenge you on your drive to work today, as you go to the store, as you walk out in the yard, just stop, take a deep breath, look around you, lift your hands. Our God is so worthy and deserving of praise. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I love you, friends. Now, as he wills, and until next time, I'll see you on the next video.